So once again, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have a very, very special guest, and I'm very appreciative that he said yes to our request to do a Know Your Nights interview. As you know, the Know Your Nights is basically just to make the KOR universe smaller by interviewing our knights from across the world and learning from their experience in the Knights of Rizal and something personal too, and maybe be able to learn from their experience and be able to break the ice whenever we see them in assemblies, and also be able to learn from them too. Since our very special guest, we always see him on Facebook, on YouTube, and he's a very well-known celebrity, not only historically, not only in the KOR, but even in the mass media in the Philippines, and maybe even abroad after this. I'm just kidding. So, Sir Xiao, would you like to make your salutations, sir?
Well, makasaysayang araw Alwin at sa lahat ng ating mga fellow brother knights, ano? Non omnis moriar, hindi
None
lahat
omnis
sa atin
moriar.
ay papanaw. Ako ay nagagalak na maanyayahan nyo dito sa programa ninyo na ah, para tayo ay magkakilala at magkakakilanlan, ano? At bagamat tayo ay magkahiwalay na lugar, kayo po ay nasa Estados Unidos at ako po ay nandito sa Tarlac City. We are bound by not just only our being Filipino, but the spirit of Sir Rizal na we try to emulate just like Rizal, sabi nga ng ating isa sa mga slogans natin dito sa Sucesos chapter. We try to emulate his spirit. So in that spirit, I would like to greet everyone a fraternal greeting. Maraming salamat.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you, for the sake of our non-Filipino speaking, so we can probably do a little bit of Taglish, because
sure.
I did get a request from our non-Filipino speaking audience to mostly do the interview in English. But of course, Taglish is okay too. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself, sir? Your background?
Well, I'm Xiao Chua. My real name is Michael Charleston Chua. In the order, my rank is Knight Commander of Rizal. I was never a commander of my chapter, but I was elevated as such by the Supreme Council. So it was a great honor for me. Now, ever since I was a kid here in Tarlac City, I was born in 1984. So I just turned 37 last January 19.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you so much. But basically, my classmates know that I idolized Rizal even when I was in elementary. And it went on until high school. I idolized in such a way that I even wrote, scrapbooks about him. And this is quite, weird, but I have one bully who once told me that when I fantasize about sex, I think about Rizal, which was an insult. It was supposed to be an insult, but in many ways that tells you how I think the people around me saw that I have a great interest about the life of the national hero. Remember that I lived in a time when the Philippine Centennial happened. So 1996, for example, I think in grade 6 at that time, was the centenary of the death of Jose Rizal. So I read Zaide because Zaide was the only available textbook in the bookstore here in Tarlac. That Zaide is fascinating. I mean, people always
I
disregard
think
Zaide, but if you're going, yeah, but if you're going to look at the basic, um, shall we say, information about about Rizal, go to Zaide. It's very easy to find. Very easy to find ang information. Not so much palabok, kumbaga. But anyway, I also was influenced by my grandmother, who was a school teacher, Ching Chua. And my mother and my aunt, Edna, my mother Vilma and my aunt Edna, they're sisters. They bring me to historical places in Manila when I was in grade 5. That was like the exciting thing about going to Manila. Grade 4, grade 5 is to go to Fort Santiago. Go to Fort Santiago, go to the Rizal Park. So, and to listen and memorize by heart, no? To know by heart the musical of Gary Granada, Sino Ka Ba, Jose Rizal. So these were my influence. There's a documentary produced by Bookmark and was shown in GMA7 on the night of the centennial of Rizal's death, which was Jose Rizal, Ang Buhay ng Isang Bayan. So this prepared me, these things. And by the way, I have to say this, I shouldn't forget this. In grade 5, the first book I read in full was Ambeto Campos Rizal Without the Overcoat. And of course, Sir Knight Ambeto Campo, KGOR, is influential in my life, not only because his writings basically made me have fun with Rizal. It's like being intimate with Rizal in such a way that, and that has uses. You humanize Rizal. Zaide presents Rizal as a hero of the nation. I was also surrounded by great friends, and one of them is Sir Knight Jonathan Balsamo, KCR. And Jonathan Balsamo, he is friends with Pablo Trillanes, the former Supreme Commander. And of course, I think it was in 2012 that we were able to fulfill that vision of Atty. Trillanes, Sir Knight Trillanes. And we were able to create a chapter called Sucesos. And remember
right.
that Sucesos is the book, one of the very first, if not the first, Philippine textbook, Philippine history textbook in the Filipino perspective. Because despite the fact that that was not Rizal's own work, when he annotated it, he claimed it for the Philippines. And because some of us are historians and some of us are instructors of the Rizal course in various universities, we were known as the Young Historians chapter. A lot of the knights are coming from different backgrounds. They're not necessarily historians. They love Jose Rizal. They have read about Jose Rizal. A lot of them have researched about Rizal. They have original research. But in many ways, to some people, and this is an observation, an honest observation by some people, we are a social club. That's true.
Yes.
We are not denying that, because we need it. We need to band together to do something, to continue the spirit of Rizal, which is not necessarily history, but doing good for others. But again, because Rizal is history, we have to sometimes remind ourselves that we have to go back to it.
Yes.
And so that is the role of this chapter.
Now, sir, thank you so
I'm
much.
sorry for the long answer, but
no. It's fine. You're making my job easy for me. But so a new knight who do not know Jose Rizal starting out, and I know you did dichotomize Ambeto Campo and Saide. Saide being more of straightforward, but more if Sir Ambeto Campo won't be offended, but more formal in a way, and
more formal.
Yes,
edifies.
And then
I think edifying.
Edifying,
edifies Rizal.
Now and then, Mr. Ambeto Campo being more unifying Jose Rizal. To you, sir, and a lot of people look up to you because you are a historian and they see your social media take on
Yes.
history, on uh, varied historical times and topics. If I was a new Knight of Rizal, which of these two, if you could choose one, which of these two approaches would you recommend to somebody who do not has a minimal knowledge of Rizal?
Well, I would like to emphasize this that each one of us has a different way of wanting to pursue Rizal's life, or wanting to discover Rizal's life. So I should say, and maybe this is important, that if your take is you want a more, you're not a historian, you're not a, you just want an easy read that will capture Rizal's, life. I think you have to not focus on one reading, because I believe that not just Sided, but any serious biography of Rizal, like for example Austin Coates, the British biographer of Jose Rizal, or even, my God, Leon Maria Guerreros, the first Filipino. If you read that side by side with Ambet Ocampos Rizal, because Ambet Ocampos Rizal without the overcoat, although it humanizes Rizal, it doesn't dwell too much on the basics in a more chronological way, because sometimes it's easier to do it in a chronological way. It gives you glimpses, no, of the different anecdotes and writings of Rizal and different interesting things about him. But in many ways, as a Knight of Rizal, we need to have at least, and this I think is important, that in 5 minutes you can talk about Rizal. A Knight of Rizal should be in 5 minutes at least, or less, can talk about, if someone asks you, who is Jose Rizal? What happened to him? You should know. You should
Now,
know.
now, sir, you did say in 5 minutes you'll be able to talk to intellectually about Rizal, and you don't know anything about Rizal. Which of these two approaches would you recommend?
Well, you go first with the formal biographies, and
Which
then
would
you go to
be
Ambet. Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
But the
Mhm.
other thing to approach
Absolutely.
it is also, if you want to be tickled first because you do not want to really be formal, you can go the other way around. There are so many perspectives about Rizal, so many ways of reading him. There's a religious way of reading him. There is a cultural way of reading him. There's a political way of reading. There's an international studies way of reading him. So when you begin with the basics, this either way, this will tickle your mind. And this is what I see with a lot of the Knights of Rizal. They're not historians. They're not history teachers. But a lot of the knights I admire have really put it into heart. Last January 31, the Sucesos chapter had a webinar about Rizal as a businessman. And the discussion is headed by our one of our members, Nico. No, he's a member of the Ibarra chapter of the Knights of Rizal, Nico, who owns Ibarra watches, and he talked about Jose Rizal as a businessman. So how do you make the most out of your lockdown now, in terms of business? So again, these are the things that, if you're going to look at it in that makes Jose Rizal interesting. Because as Knights of Rizal, as multifaceted as we are in the membership, that's also how multifaceted our national hero was. And for a reason, because they wanted to prove, in the time when a lot of the Spaniards here in the Philippines were saying we were stupid, that we can excel in a lot of things. And that's the role of Jose Rizal in our nationhood. One of his roles is to show us what a Filipino can be.
I wanted to ask you about this topic on the history of the Knights of Rizal.
Okay.
I know you had a lecture one time at the museum with students, Ayala Museum maybe,
I
about
GSIS Museum. Yeah.
yes. And I want to ask you about the internationalization of the Knights of Rizal.
Mhm.
Would you um, agree that the 646 incorporated Rizal, the Knights of Rizal, in the Philippines? However, as time went by, just because the nature of Jose Rizal, he became international with members non-Filipino and everything. Which
Yes.
part of the KOR history do you think was the highlight of the evolution of from a national organization to an international organization?
Well, as a public historian, I am not so particular with a lot of details. What I did with the lecture was really to give a general view. I will defer to people who have more knowledge about the various stages, and of course we have a lot of still primary sources because they're still alive. But what I can tell you is this:
Yeah.
um, it's evident, for example, with the OFW phenomenon, because when people started migrating to other countries, and some of them were Knights of Rizal, they would bring along their being Knights of Rizal. So the diaspora helped in that. And since there would be chapters forming in other parts of the world, and Rizal is like our national mascot. If people want to ask who is the Filipino, we always want to point it. Rizal is the Filipino. And so when Knights of Rizal forms in Melbourne, for example, or in Canada, people would say, let's build the Rizal Monument, which makes Jose Rizal now, I believe, he had more statues than any hero in the world. I will ask you, do you see, even if the Chinese are here in the Philippines, do you see a Mao Zedong statue in the Philippines? Do you see a George Washington or an Abraham Lincoln monument in the Philippines? But everywhere Filipinos go, there is a Jose Rizal monument, even in the places where he did not go.
Very nice.
So
Now,
imagine.
mhm,
So that one, and then of course, as you said, it's the nature of Rizal himself. Why? Rizal spoke many languages. Rizal went to many places. He is a man well beyond his time because Rizal was a lover of the world. He did not forget his roots, although albeit I believe that he was slightly more westernized than perhaps Andres Bonifacio. And when I look at these two heroes, they're complementary because in many ways, Bonifacio brings back Rizal to the people by translating him and making his ideas more understandable because Rizal had become an intellectual. He was a Western-minded intellectual. And Bonifacio snatched him and translates him and, brings him to the Katipunan. That's why, they implicated him to the revolution even if he was not part of it. But what I'm saying here is this. Because Rizal showed us that even if we love our country, we can also embrace the world.
mhm.
And when he embraced the world, he learned about their culture, their languages, even dated their women. Dated, not necessarily mated. Okay, I'm sorry. That's you should cut that. That
Very well.
dated, not necessarily had relationship with them, because I believe that a lot of the women that are mentioned, they did not become lovers. He only have, I think, 3 to 4 girlfriends. But he was so open to the world that in many ways, when you know about Rizal, the world opens up to him.
Yes.
So look at this. Austin Coates was here in Manila. I think he was a colonial officer in Hong Kong, a British guy. Stayed in the Manila Hotel. And one time he was just walking and saw this monument of Jose Rizal, the Motostela. So is this guy? Is he a dictator? It says Rizal. And then he realizes, oh, I know there's a Rizal stamps. I saw Rizal stamps before. and started to buy a book or two about Rizal and start, whoa, this guy is amazing. He went to the British Museum where Karl Marx also, studied and, read. And all of these things. So just to cut the long story short, what I'm saying here is that people from other countries, when they discover about Rizal, because Filipinos talk about him a lot and put monuments of him everywhere and markers wherever he went. And in places where he never went, like Peru, there is a Rizal monument. People were like, who is this Rizal? And then add to that, the name of the organization itself is a factor. The Order of the Knights of Rizal.